I used to go ski in the morning in Colorado before I worked an afternoon shift, so it's a lot of freedom for the doctor too, because you're only working 30, 36 hours a week, but the office is open 66 hours. And
Yeah, it's a guarantee of a third of what you could get if you're working for Comfort Dental. You could take that guarantee, or you could bet on yourself and just believe that you're going to be able to make it work.
It's a simple system. Rick says, I'm brilliant because I decided, I'm going to charge lower fees and stay open late and treat everybody nice. But that's kind of the core of the system. But he just put it together in a way that works really well.
Welcome to the Comfort Dental Podcast. Get a peek behind the mask with real people and real conversations.
So today I get to be with Dr. Bloss, one of the Comfort Dental OGs. Thank you so much for even letting me interview you today.
Oh, it's great. I'm excited to come down here and tell the story.
So I wasn't familiar with the fact that Comfort Dental has been around now over 3 decades.
That's correct.
So you were there around the founding of it, is that correct?
Well, Dr. Kushner, who's the original founder of kind of lean and mean practice management and the whole thing, had started 2 other practices previous. And then in 1991, he was opening another one, and he advertised in the CDA Journal. And at that time, I was in a practice in Colorado Springs, high-end, high-overhead type thing. And I came up and listened to it, and I went, wow, this makes a whole lot of sense. Lower overhead, a little higher volume, taking care of patients that actually need treatment. It just made sense to me, so I said, sign me on. And so Neil Norton and I started the original one that was called Comfort Dental, the 3rd practice. And it was the first one that Rick really didn't practice in full time. He just kind of instructed us in lean and mean. And about 2 years in, he goes, well, this seems to be working. Just telling people about the system seems to work. So let's take the existing 2. We'll change them to Comfort Dental. We'll open 3 more. We'll call them Comfort Dental, and we'll market together, and we'll buy supplies together. And that's basically how it started.
Now, at this time, were there other models where businessmen decided, hey, let's have more of a franchise look of dentistry at that time?
Well, there still aren't any others that are franchises. Now, there's a lot of DSOs, and I honestly don't remember. I think Western Dental was out there, and I think there were a few others, smaller DSOs starting at that point. But we were one of the first ones that started, and kind of with the naming and the advertising and stuff all like that together. So.
Now, it's pretty uncommon to meet a dentist that has the science, clinical wiring to be a great dentist, and at the same time is ridiculously entrepreneurial. So when you met Dr. Kushner, could you tell he was kind of a unicorn?
Well, it just his explanation just made so much sense, and from a business now, I've been in practice long enough to know, I always tell our students this, it doesn't matter what kind of dentistry you want to do, you high-end, crown and bridge, fancy, take care of people. If you can't pay your bills, you can't practice. So I generally tell people Comfort Dental is a business that happens to do dentistry, because we do run it from a business standpoint, not because we're trying to be, we use the word lean and mean, not because we're being mean. It's just if you're not a good businessman, if you can't do your payroll, if you can't meet your bills, you can't practice. It just makes sense. And since we were able to do it in such a way that the dentist took home more income, it was the patients benefited because it's a lower price to them, and the dentist benefited because he's getting to take more money home, and just a win-win for both, which is unusual.
Yeah, and also the dream is, you graduate from dental school and you picture yourself being chairside and being a great dentist, and then all of a sudden the business reality set in of I don't have patient flow, assuming when you get into practice, right?
Yeah.
If you own your own practice and all of a sudden, the realities of managing the budget and paying your employees and making sure that you're keeping a new patient flow and that you're not getting hosed on supplies or with vendor relationships. And then you look and you realize, I have a DDS or DMD. I don't have an MBA behind my name. I didn't learn the business side. And that's where it seems like a model that partners with the dentist and says, hey, you can become a great dentist. We can mentor you even on the dental side, but we'll help institute the business side of things so that you're not overwhelmed by that entire side that you didn't get training on. So even then, like in 91, 92, was it clear that the business side was becoming more complex? Because I'm just saying, like, over the last 20 years with websites, modern marketing, now even with AI, keeping up with how to be competitive was different than getting a spot in the Yellow Pages.
Oh, yeah. Yellow Pages were a funny time. I mean, we were on shopping carts. We did everything. So we tried lots of stuff. It sounds kind of funny, but 5 years in doing dentistry, if you're struggling with the dentistry, you made a mistake. Dentistry really becomes fairly routine and fairly easy, the physical doing the dentistry. The difficult part is keeping the patient calm, keeping the patient happy, getting the patient numb, taking care of the staff members, all that personal stuff and communications and stuff really becomes the difficult part. My poor wife, she basically wouldn't talk to me for about 30 or 40 minutes after I got home because I'd spent the entire day talking to staff members and patients and keeping them calm and all that kind of stuff. And so you get that's the overwhelming part of dentistry, really, when you get into it.
The people side.
The people side is, the tough side. I mean, dentistry is physically demanding just from the position you put yourself in, but the emotional side of, patients, and I understand no patient wants to come in and get an injection and have a filling or whatever. It's not high on anybody's bucket list. And so they have a lot of anxiety. And so you are working on a patient who's awake and you're going to do something technically difficult. And in the meantime, you have to get them to cooperate and keep them calm and keep them comfortable, as well as manage the staff members and the materials and all that kind of stuff. So it's really that part that gets to be more taxing than the physical doing of the dentistry.
So how long were you in practice?
I graduated in 1980, started my practice that summer, and I practiced up until 2014.
Okay. So how did you manage the ups and downs of dentistry and avoid burnout?
I think, once again, the lean and mean system in Comfort Dental is a big reason why I could stay that long, because we have a system within the management program that's called the NERD system, and that's new patients, emergencies, recall, and diagnosis. So in our system, we work 12-hour shifts, 7:30 to 1:30 and 1:30 to 7:30. And so lots of times I would do production in the morning, which is very intense, doing a lot of work on a lot of patients and stuff like that. And then in the afternoon, I would be the nerd. And the nerd's job basically is to take care of those new patients come in the emergencies, deal with stuff with the staff or whatever else, and help the production doctor be productive. And that was great for me because then you could talk to the patients. You had time to talk to the patients, sit down and see what really was going on with them and stuff like that. And because you didn't have that pressure of that next patient coming in that you knew that you had a big procedure and stuff to do on. So the system really helped a lot. And just in the system in general, it's just real simple. It's a simple system. Rick he often says, I'm brilliant because I decided, I'm going to charge lower fees and stay open late and treat everybody nice. So, but that's kind of the core of the system. But he just put it together in a way that works really well.
Yeah, it does. On the outside looking in, I didn't know much about Comfort Dental.
Right.
And then now 20 interviews in, I was just sharing this on the last podcast. In sales, they talk about something called with or without you energy, where if you as a salesperson kind of has that feeling of I don't really need this, meaning we as a company are going to do great whether you join us or not.
Right.
It gives you a position of leverage because you're communicating I'm not desperate for the sale. Mm-hmm. And yet every dentist that I was talking to for Comfort Dental had a certain energy that was almost we kind of have the best kept secret in dentistry, and we don't know why not everyone's flocking to this, but we're making great money and we love what we do.
Right.
Now, I also go to trade shows, owning my own electric toothbrush company, and I'm talking to dentists. And once you get past that initial facade of, oh, I love being a dentist, you hear about the real reasons why burnout exists, which is I'm going backwards in my practice. I might need to sell. I had a friend might need to sell his practice after 21 years simply to pay off his debts. 21 years later. And he's like, what's been the point of me building this practice if I'm not going to get anything out of it? And yet great dentist, but isn't part of a model that allows him to thrive.
Yeah, it's tough economically because, he probably has a practice and he, works 36 to 40 hours a week, and that facility sits there for a lot of the rest of the week, and he has employees, that have been with him forever, and what unfortunately happens, or, they've been there so long they feel like they need a raise, even though economically it might not make sense for the practice. And then he has nobody to bounce things off of, and he has no support when he's gone. It's tough being a solo practitioner, and there's people that can do it. We have doctors in our organization. I said, you could have practiced anywhere. You're skilled. You have great people skills. You're good at business. You could have been success anywhere. But I still don't think you'd be as successful if you weren't in the system, just because the volume of patients, the lower overhead, all that kind of stuff, such an easy way to practice if you're doing dentistry. Not that dentistry is easy. Dentistry is a difficult profession, but if you're going to do it, this is the way to do it. Because I've done it other ways. I had my own solo practice. I was in a high-end Crown and Bridge practice, and then I came to this, and this sold me.
So knowing that you'd already had your practice, they say contrast is the mother of clarity. What came into view when you, and was there a difference between, I think this is what Comfort Dental is saying they are going to be, versus I'm 6 months in now, I'm a year in, and it's was it exactly aligned to everything you'd imagined? And how different was that Comfort Dental reality versus what you experienced as a solo GP?
Well, like I said, first of all, having a partner, that's a huge deal. Even though we in the first 2 years, we didn't practice together, but we helped support each other. One of us, I was better with the computer, so I did all the computer and stuff. And although we had pegboards back there, but I did the Quicken and all that kind of stuff, and my partner did all the marketing and stuff. So we both had skills, but just working with each other. If we had problems clinically, we could bounce things off each other. And then, nice thing in Comfort Dental too is, as big as we've gotten, if you want to learn how to do extractions better or root canals better, you can go watch another Comfort Dental doctor, and they'll welcome you in to do that. And so, as far as was it different what Comfort Dental sold me versus what? No, it wasn't. It was turned out better than I thought it was going to be, honestly. When I originally went to that meeting at Rick's house long ago, there were a couple of doctors there that had practiced with him a long time, and I looked at their numbers, and they talked about what they did, and it's what it was when we got into practice. It took a little while to build, but really not that long.
So you got to see it from its very beginnings. At what point, even back then, knowing where you're at now with over 150 locations, 500 doctors, is that kind of what Dr. Kushner had envisioned all along, or was he kind of just taking it in stride?
No, I don't think any of us really thought about it, because we weren't a franchise. When we went to those 6 practices, we weren't a franchise. We were just marketing together. Once again, pool money for marketing and to buy supplies and all that kind of stuff. And then I don't remember. I don't have the greatest memory, but 5 or 6 years in, a lawyer came to us and said, "Well, you look like a franchise. You act like a franchise. You need franchise documents." And that's when we technically became a franchise. When we first were going to expand to do those 3 practices, I was calling friends from dental school. We couldn't find anybody to. We were going to open 3 practices. We needed 6 doctors, and I'm calling people I know to try to get them to come and join us. So it was tough. But then, in fact, the 3rd practice, Neil and I and his wife Kathy, we all had to go open that one because we didn't have enough doctors at the time. So we worked a lot to make it work, and then it just kind of mushroomed from there.
It's interesting to hear that one of the things you're saying about the reason why Comfort Dental got established was that you guys realized the value of, well, if we have one name across different locations, then there's going to be a benefit to marketing if we can get that one name, Comfort Dental, marketed, because we'll all benefit from the same exact kind of marketing dollars. You know, especially if the region is, you know, somewhat close where we're not all in completely different states. And to have that understanding, it seems really profound for the time, because that, again, was when marketing was a lot more one-dimensional and simple.
Right.
Now, I'm really close to a marketing agency in dentistry, and they're like, we're not even able to keep up as a full-time marketing agency with all the dimensions and complexities of modern-day marketing simply because of AI and all the different ways that it's just made marketing and the speed at which people are doubling down on this part or this part or this part or coming up with different variations. It just makes it seemingly like impossible to be on the front end of whatever marketing best practices look like. And that's for a specialist. So imagine a dental practice now trying to benefit in an era where, like, whether you're spending $5,000 a month for one practice or whether you're spending $5,000 a month for 10 practices in the same area, like that, spreading that cost around all the practices, like it just makes sense. My background is in product sales. You know, my dad has a dental supply company. So even just the idea of economies of scale,
Right.
where you can all purchase and get discounts there, the solo doc's getting hit with one-on-one marketing contracts,
Right.
you know, one-on-one product costs.
And trying to stand out in the market, you know, that's just. And another problem is when they do get to the end of their career, you know, they're selling, you know, Dr. Joe's practice, you know, and I'm selling a Comfort Dental practice. Well, that new Comfort Dental doctor can walk into my practice and pretty much take over my patient base and be fine. Whereas that personality of Dr. Joe, you know, if those new patients don't like him or he's different or the staff doesn't like him, you know, it can all go away pretty quickly. I mean, literally, Neil Norton had blonde hair and was about 2 inches shorter than me, and I have obviously dark hair. And patients would come in and say, "Oh, no, I saw you last time." And I'd look in the chart and go, "Nope, you saw Dr. Norton, but it's okay. I'll take care of you anyhow." Just, you know, I always tell people, I said, when you're joining us, if you have a big ego and you want it to be your practice, don't join us. But the generic, you know, you're a Comfort Dental doctor, makes your practice more valuable to sell down the road.
That's really fascinating, because I've only looked at the front end of a doctor not having their name on the board and understanding, again, if it's ego, I can understand why they wouldn't do it. But I never thought of on the back end that actually hurts them, having their name on the practice, because then there really is a strong switch in the patient's mind versus,
Yeah, who's this new guy?
yeah, where it's still Comfort Dental. This is how we practice. We have a culture. And because of that, when we get a new doctor, we've already trained them up in the culture. So patients aren't going to notice. They shouldn't notice much.
Right.
And it doesn't hurt the valuation. That's really interesting. I never thought of that.
And they've probably already been to more than one doctor within the system anyhow.
So what do you think are some of the issues, I don't know, that are really challenging for dentists today, and how Comfort Dental kind of solves those issues?
Well, debt for the dental students coming out is just insane. You probably already talked about this on it, but we just had a meeting last week, and one guy was $640,000 when he got out. One girl was going to be $820,000, and I'm just going, it almost doesn't make sense to go to dental school. In fact, I don't understand why they're giving these kids all this money, honestly, because you get out and you have $500,000 of debt, and you got to pay that back. And what's funny, and I told the students this the other day, I said, well, you've already decided when you get out, you've got to make a lot of money because you have this $500,000 worth of debt. Whether you realize it or not, you've already made a decision that you need to go out and make a lot of somewhere. And so, I'm concerned about the profession from that perspective. I'm not concerned about the students. I mean, they're just like we've always been. They want to go out, and most of them want to help people. I mean, that's what most of them get into it for. Everybody likes to work with their hands. They like to be with patients. They like to be with people. All that's kind of the standard stuff that everybody does. But now they've got this huge debt that they've got to meet, and financial stress is no fun. And I think financial stress can lead to poor clinical decisions. So you want people to come in and feel comfortable where they are, so that they can, because it is a debt you have to pay back. I mean, there's all sorts of rumors how things might go away in 30 years or whatever, but yeah, that's crazy. I don't know how, and I don't know how they handle that stress, and some of them I just think are oblivious to it. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. It's rather debilitating.
Yeah.
And being in practice, let's just say the money problem's solved, and somehow you don't have debt and you make great money. Dentistry is hard with that solved.
Yeah, dentistry is hard work. That's the one thing that I didn't realize getting into dentistry, and the one thing they don't really tell you is that it's physically, difficult. The bending, the working, the moving around, just all the stuff that you do, and your eyes, all that kind of stuff. It's physically sound, all those things. It wears on you over time.
But then you throw in like a difficult patient.
Yeah.
And I'm saying if those conditions, though, are now in an environment where you also are struggling financially,
Right.
and you're realizing month to month, you're not even able to, either pay off your debts, or more debts are coming up for your practice. So you're paying off your student loans, but, you're accruing more debts on the practice side because you're not able to make payroll or whatnot. Well, then all of a sudden, when you're having a difficult patient, it just compounds. And that's why I think there's a dark side of dentistry, with the suicidality being there. That's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where talking to the Comfort Dental doctors and seeing how much, joy, almost how carefree they sounded. I was like, man, that's a dentist that loves dentistry and is feeling fulfilled. And who wins in that model? The patient.
Yeah, because you can treat those. I mean, I can distinctly remember having a patient in consultation, going over his treatment plan and the costs and all that kind of stuff. And I don't remember, it was a long time ago. And I said, maybe his copay was $500. And he goes, well, doc, I have $200 today. I said, did I say 500? I meant to say 200, because I had the flexibility with my overhead that I could make adjustments like that. That's another reason we have doctors present treatment plans, because the doctor's in the best position to take the limited dollars. Every patient has a limited amount of dollars, and use those dollars to the best use to get them comfortable. I used to always tell patients, I don't ever want you to be an emergency patient again. So let's take care of this stuff to get you comfortable, and then we can do the rest of the stuff in a week or a month or 2 years. I'm going to be here. And I didn't worry about them coming back, because if you build trust with them, they're going to come back, and they're not going to find it really any place less expensive. So,
which is crazy that Comfort Dental gets to be competitive on the front of our dentists do more volume, which means they get to develop their mastery and expertise, and we offer treatments for less. And I think sometimes that might be confusing for patients. How is it that I might be getting the same or better quality for less? It seems like there's a catch, but it's just that the model allows that.
Right. When you have your own lab, when you're buying supplies at a lower amount, when you're using the facilities twice as much as other dentists, because we're using them 66 hours a week, it just, overheads everything. You can take home 50 cents on the dollar, or you can take home 25 cents on the dollar. It's your decision on how you practice.
So, doctor, were you saying that Comfort Dental is the only structure that's actually a franchise model?
There might be one other smaller one, and I think there's one out of France. But as far as our structure as a franchise, where the doctors are the owners, we're the only one that I know of. Because in most of the DSOs, the doctors are earning quite a bit less. And the thing what DSOs sell is they sell we're going to handle all the business stuff for you. You just go do the dentistry. And that's fine, except they take such a huge chunk to handle that business. And if you have a model like ours that allows the dentist to be the manager and model and still do the dentistry, it works better. It does take more skill and more effort, and you can't just walk away at the end of the day. You're an owner. But we make the job of being an owner easier.
And they also get more autonomy over clinical decisions.
They have absolute autonomy. The only thing we all ever talk about when we go into a practice is the business side. If they need help clinically or they have questions how we might do, certainly. But we're not going to say, don't do that, don't do that. We're all about getting their overhead where they can make those decisions.
So as you've been consistently like waving the Comfort Dental banner for all these years, what's like some of the main misunderstandings or pushbacks that you get that you realize aren't actually grounded in reality? It's just somehow some perception that people have of Comfort Dental that like, are you constantly having to correct any?
Well, I mean, to this day, I probably won't lead that I'm a Comfort Dental doctor if I run into a bunch of other dentists, just because the perception is that we're just going to we're just a mill, that we're just going to get them in there and do a lot of work and low quality work and get them out. And that's how we do it, and that we don't care about the patients and stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, lots of times people have already made that decision about you, and they don't want to hear the reality of it because it makes them less successful, or they're stupid because they didn't come join us. You know, we've had doctors that go, I don't know why I didn't do this 10 years earlier. I've known about you guys. I just didn't do it, you know, and they listen to those people that would say, you know, oh, they're just doing crappy dentistry. That's the only way they can have overheads that low and get that many patients, or that's the only way they can treat that many patients. You know, treating one patient at a time, to me, would be boring. It's not bragging. It's just to have 4 or 5 patients going on. It is kind of a mental gymnastics. I'm doing a root canal over here. I'm doing an extraction over here. But once again, if you're skilled and you've been doing it a long time, it's really not that hard. And it enables us to have that low overhead and meet a lot of patients. I used to worry when I'd be sitting there, I'd have to make an excuse to get up to leave the room. And then I just realized patients know I have other patients in other rooms, you know. As long as I'm treating them well when I'm in there and I'm not having them sit forever, you know, they're understanding. You know, patients want to be where there's a lot of other patients and people are getting treated. And they in our profession, I think it's nice that they still trust the doctor to make the decisions for them. In fact, that was probably one of the harder things for me when I got into Comfort, is particularly in a high-end crown and bridge practice I was in, most of those patients were type A, and they wanted control over everything. And I came into Comfort, and the patient would go, I don't know, because I give them some, you know, variety of what they could do. And they go, I don't know, doc. You're the doctor. You tell me. And that puts a real responsibility on you to make the best decisions for those patients.
Okay, so I'd never even considered that.
Yeah.
The idea that the high-end patient might also be really particular or challenging because they have something set in their mind, versus the grateful, I don't have a lot here, doc, and I need help, like get me out of pain. And they're going to trust you. And almost, I mean, obviously I'm sure there's challenging patients too, but that's a very interesting picture that you painted there. It's sad to hear that at times you've almost felt like, I don't want to lead with being a Comfort Dental doc, almost because it's like sometimes like a tier lower, like somehow you're not a dentist that owns your own private practice, and yet ultimately you get to make a difference in probably more patients' lives than any other type of dentist.
Right. And it's just kind of like in a short-term conversation with somebody that doesn't know you, it's not worth the effort to try to convince them in 5 minutes that, you know, everything they've heard or supposed over the time was wrong. Obviously, if I get to know, I've got friends in the dental industry that know what I do, that we are good friends, and they understand and appreciate our system. But it's just like anything, you know, politics or whatever, people form opinions without a lot of knowledge sometimes. So
if there was like a perfect archetype of a Comfort Dental dentist, what would they look like?
basically somebody that I think that's open-minded, that is willing to follow rules. I mean, we certainly have. I always used to tell people, "Hey, the system works. The wheel does not need to be fixed." So you do have to kind of put your ego away a little bit and just do the system. But somebody that just wants to learn too, and family people. I mean, we're huge about family. I mean, I was going to address that earlier when we were talking about difficult patients. All that other stuff, and then you go home to a family that you're trying to take care of too. And if you can't support them, it's such a blessing to me. I can still do help my girls because I can. It's such a privilege to be able to do that.
And I think that's why dentists sign up for dentistry in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a profession that says you can have the dream. You
Right.
can do work that you're proud of. You can make a difference in people's lives and take care of the people that you're responsible for, your spouse and your children.
Right.
And when all of a sudden someone's 10, 15 years in and they feel like they're drowning in their practice because they're not making ends meet, and they do have this expectation, even like socially, like, hey, well, you're supposed to be successful.
Right.
You're a dentist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're supposed to be able to take your family on nice, expensive vacations, but the paycheck or the numbers don't line up. That's a lot of pressure on a dentist.
Mm-hmm.
And I've met some of the Comfort Dental dentists that are like, I had to make a pivot because I realized it wasn't working out.
Right.
And that's where, to me, it doesn't seem like Comfort Dental. It's obvious that a dentist coming out of school is going to understand the value. Some might. I don't think it's that obvious that most of them will, because they're probably a little, I don't know, not very trusting, and they're not really sure, is this really the case? But anyone that's practiced for 5 to 7 years, I think they're the ones that realize, wow, Comfort Dental is throwing a lifeline here. And dentistry is difficult, and I love the mentorship model. I'd love to be able to take vacations and know that someone else is there in my practice. I'd love to be able to have the earning potential because we don't have this massive overhead. So yeah, to me, it seems like that's kind of the ideal sweet spot for dentists coming into the Comfort Dental ecosystem.
Yeah, and sometimes I hate that we talk about money so much, but it's the reality of people go, well, what's my lifestyle going to be like? I don't know how much money you're going to make. It's not going to fall from the sky. They're just realities that you have to be able to pay bills in order to practice and take care of yourself. So I'm really concerned about the number of students coming out with real large debt loads.
Do you have any stories of just in the last 5 years of dentists that have either succeeded in the Comfort Dental model or someone that, was maybe cautious or skeptical about joining, but then joined, and maybe what life looked like after that?
Yeah, we've got a lady in Lakewood that was with basically a competitor of ours for, I think she said 6 or 7 years. And then, and that competitor had supposedly, we've had some mimickers. They never mimic us completely, and they never mimic the financial model part. But she worked with them for, I think, 7 or 8 years, and then joined us. And it was just like, she's doing a lot better with us. It's more comfortable for us. And she was, I think, friends with some of the owners there, and she just loves our model better. So, I always say, experience is something you don't appreciate until you have some, which for young people, it sounds like you're putting them down, but it's reality. And you're right. Someone that's been out working in the dental system for 5 or 7 years has a better appreciation of what we have. But also, we've had guys come out of school and hit the ground running with Comfort Dental that just do fantastic. So,
and I think those are the ones that are ready to not have the employee mindset.
Yeah.
They're already ready to kind of be more of an employer, think, appreciate what the autonomy could do. But I think it takes a lot of wisdom to be able to foresee that.
Oh yeah.
Instead of just give me the guarantee. I don't care if it's not a lot. And I think that's a trap, because it makes them feel like, well, at least it's a guarantee. Yeah, it's a guarantee of a third of what you could get if you're working for Comfort Dental. You could take that guarantee, or you could bet on yourself and just believe that you're going to be able to make it work.
I know, and that's another thing I don't understand. To get into dental school, you've bet on yourself. You've worked hard to get there, to do all that kind of stuff, and then you get out and suddenly you're like, well, this is what I wanted to do, but it's like, they don't know where to go, or they're scared to make a decision that's going to be bad, or I don't know what it is, but it's confusing how when they get out, suddenly they become timid.
Right, which is a contrast to what
Yeah.
it takes to get through dental school.
Right. Because it's, and it's not easy. It's not easy to get in. It's not easy to get through. And I think that's part of it. They're still worrying about their credits and their boards and all that kind of stuff, and having a life because you're getting older, and then you got to decide what to do when you get out. But
Right, but I just keep going back to the fact that like there's so many dentists I talk to that bought the dream of the solo practice route, which there's nothing wrong with that.
mm-hmm.
Because now there's so many young dentists that just bought into this whole, I just want to be chairside and be an employee my whole life.
Right.
And like those are completely at odds with each other. But if there's a different model where it's like, well, what if you could be an owner
Mm-hmm.
and also have support
Right.
and also have help, so you're not just so alone? Because the solo GP route, that's intimidating.
Yeah.
I've got to figure out how to actually take care of the livelihood of my whole team and navigate the challenges of, it's no longer the field of dreams. If I just put up a sign, build it, people will come until
Right.
they don't. And you realize I can't sustain this. And you're still spending a ton of money to get into that
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. But I get the whole sense of, but I want to, like, I get the autonomy of I'm a business owner versus this. I just want to work for someone, be told what to do, clock in, clock out. I don't think that was ever the dream for dentistry. So that's surprising me that actually has some sort of traction today. But maybe it's just a short-term thing. People are like, hey, let me just get my feet wet with this. But then when they're finished with that, again, the option is either a franchise opportunity like this, where you have A players in your court as a backup, you have this mentorship model, or you're just on your own.
Yeah. No, I think it's tough being on your own. I know very few people and I know a lot of dentists that make that successful or are happy or both financially successful and happy with it. So
How long were you on your own? Because you said
almost 10 years.
Okay.
A small town in Oklahoma of about 10,000 people. So, and there were 6 dentists in that town at that time. There's actually only, I think, 2 now. But I had two little girls in a small town in Oklahoma, and we decided to move. My wife gave me the option of either going to Colorado Springs or Seattle, because Guyman was her hometown, so she didn't want to leave. So those were the 2 options, and so I found a practice in Colorado Springs. Like I said, was a high-end Crown Bridge, and I did a lot of TMJ and implants and all that kind of stuff, and it was fine. It just I just felt like sometimes we were treating people that didn't really need the treatment, and the overhead was like at 70%. And you're kind of, like I said, I couldn't make an adjustment to a fee because we couldn't afford to. And it was a very nice practice, the nice chairs, the nice linoleum, the marble, and all that kind of stuff. But it just didn't make any sense. And like I said, it was such a contrast when I went up and spoke with Rick, and he did a little presentation. It just went, wow, this just makes so much more sense.
So how did you hear about that? So here you are, you're like 10 years in. By all standards, you're successful. You've been able to get 10 years in on a private practice.
Yeah.
What are you hearing that makes you even think maybe there's a better way?
Well, I was an associate in this practice in Colorado Springs, and there was just a little blurb in the CDA Journal opening new practice and about lean and mean. And I'd never heard of what lean and mean and stuff was. So I went up and, like I said, I think had Anna Cadot and Jerry Smith and a couple of other doctors that were in the one that was called Premier at that time. And they just talked about what they did every day and what their income was and stuff like that. And then that was kind of it. It was kind of a short presentation. And I got the lean and mean materials and looked over that, and I just went, I'm in. This makes sense. I want to do this. I want to be an owner. I want to treat those. Like I said, we're treating so many patients that actually need treatment. Sometimes when you get in, if you're educated, brush your teeth every day and floss, you really shouldn't have a lot of problems with your teeth. And unfortunately, our population has a low dental IQ, which is why there's so much need. But we are treating people that actually need care, that are in pain, that want to take care of their teeth, that just want to learn how to take care of their teeth. That's, I was brought up in a family with my mother was a nurse, my dad was a doctor. We took care of things, and you don't understand that there's a lot of people out there that don't even have the basic needs to do that, or the basic knowledge, or weren't ever taught that you need to brush your teeth every day or floss every day and stuff like that. And so when people say, oh, there's not any dentistry out there anymore, I go, well, not in the population you're looking at, but the population we see, there's a ton of work to do, which is unfortunate, honestly, because it's usually neglect, but it still has to be taken care of.
Yeah, and some of the dentists I talk to for comfort, it's almost like they get to do some mission work, so to speak, where, again, they know their books are solid, they know money's coming in, and you said kind of like that $500, oh, I meant $200 situation where it's like, I can get you out of pain,
right,
and I'm not wondering if I'm going to be able to make ends meet because of this.
Right.
And there's a sense of pride in the best way of these dentists that feel like they know they're doing the right thing and they're able to do the right thing,
right,
because the business model affords them that opportunity.
Yes.
Versus the dentist that feels like their hands are tied. And I've heard the stories about some of the high-end practices that aren't always that busy, and the dentist is in his office playing video games waiting for the patient to show up.
Yeah.
And here you mentioned the mental gymnastics of you're on the go.
Yeah.
And that's where I think you probably would agree with me that like one of the archetypes for a dentist that would probably succeed in the comfort dental model is someone that's willing to stay busy and that's willing to work. And if that is the case, it can be a very rewarding career for them.
And it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more interesting, So I enjoyed it. We would get, we had 5 chairs once, and Neil and I are sitting there working because I was a nerd or whatever, and we had emergencies coming in, and we would take those emergencies. So there was a lot of patients in the office, but we just, kind of got through it. And like I said, the patients understood that, particularly the emergency patients, that we were going to take them when we could, but we tell them to come on down, and we just kind of work through it. And it's kind of like a community. It's kind of a cooperative thing, You might have one patient that gets a little upset that they're waiting, but most patients will understand. In fact, Rick said what he did once is a patient was complaining, and he picked him up and said, "Come with me." And he walked in and says, "Which one of these patients do you want me to throw out while I take care of you?" Rick's a little more confrontational than I am, but it was true. We're there trying to take care of them, and we're not trying to do it out of greed or get more money in. It's just there's a lot of patients out there that need help, particularly in the evenings. When we're open at 5:36 or on a Saturday and stuff like that.
On a Saturday, every other practice, if it's Monday through Thursday, what do? You go to the ER? Yeah. That's inefficient.
Yeah.
That was a glaring business model, opportunity there.
Yeah. And it just makes sense. Plus, then, I used to go ski in the morning in Colorado before I worked an afternoon shift, so it's off a lot of freedom for the doctor too, because you're only working 36 hours a week, but the office is open 66 hours. And so just like I said, to me, it just makes perfect sense. But apparently I'm not good at conveying that, or we're not good at conveying it to a lot of the students, because sometimes they just don't seem to believe us, or maybe it seems too good to be true. But that's why we bring them out to Colorado, for them to sit down and talk with us, because we want them to know, hey, we're real people. We're dentists. We've been in the organization. We want you to know that this is not some big corporate conglomerate. It's there's 7 or 8 of us that are running this thing. So there's dentists out there that feel like they want to attract the right kind of patient. And in Comfort Dental, every patient's the right. We take anybody that comes in, and unless they're threatening the staff. I mean, I have had to throw a couple of patients out of the office, but most patients, are the difficult patients you talk about, most of the time they're just scared people. They don't know what's coming, and let's see, it's going to hurt. It's going to cost me money. I'm going to lose time from work, blah, blah, blah. gee, sign me up for that. That's kind of what you're dealing with. And so every patient's the right kind of patient, but there was a practice. In fact, we started a practice in a location because the local practice, if somebody called up and had a accent that wasn't like you and me, there wasn't an appointment for a month. So we said, well, then if you don't see him, we will. So we started a practice in that area. So we treat everybody, it doesn't, black, white, child, whatever, everybody's the right kind of patient
But I could understand why, if you're in private practice, you probably need to go after the higher income demographics, because you don't have the efficiency of a model that can actually still be profitable without that.
Right.
So maybe you're left just having to compete with every other private practice, going for that upper echelon, as if that's the easier way. And I don't think it is.
Well, it's chasing that top 10 or 20%, and I tell patients, I tell people that come in, it says, Comfort Dental model is lower to middle income. That's the patient base we're shooting for. We get higher income people because I found that people that make money like to save money. So everybody wants value for what you spend. And so, I don't know if this applies to all of this. Was hilarious. I had dinner with Rick 2 nights ago, and he went to hit a bucket of balls. And he had $20 out, and he was going to give it to the guy. And the guy says, no, it's $56 for a bucket ball. And Rick goes, I make millions of dollars a year, and I'm not going to pay you $56 for a bucket of balls. Because everybody wants value for what your money, you just don't want to throw it away. And even him, who makes a really good living, wasn't going to pay $56 to go hit a bucket of balls because that was stupid.
I think that's a great story. Because, when you work hard to earn the money that you've earned, you place a certain value on that.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're willing to just get hosed simply because you have the money.
Right.
But that's also the feeling sometimes when you walk in these Taj Mahal practices. It's like, so I'm paying for this?
Yeah, exactly.
There's some sort of feeling there. But then you have offices like Dr. Nguyen out of Kansas City where he's like, I have doctors coming in, nurses, some pretty educated people in the area. And then I also have the people that could be homeless.
Right.
And I have them both in the same practice. And that can also happen in a Comfort Dental.
Sure, it does happen. So that's pretty common.
You give dentists an opportunity to make a lot of money, which you should talk about, doing the one thing that they signed up for, which is helping patients that need help.
Yeah.
And making a difference in people's lives. So if there's a dentist right now that is considering it, maybe they've heard some of the stories, and I don't know, they're just like, what would the next step be for them to learn more? Would it be to go to one of those in-person meetings?
Or we have a franchise website they can get on and look at Lean and Mean materials. They can sign up there, and then they can come out to visit us in Colorado. And getting into the system is so easy, and we try to make it as risk-proof as possible. We have a system where you can have a trial period, where you can come in and work for 6 months just like a partner. You do have to put some money down, but you get to work just like a partner. You get paid just like a partner. And at the end of 6 months, you go, I don't really like this system. I don't want to do this. I want to leave. We give you your down payment back, and you keep the money you've earned, and you lose a little interest on the money you've paid. So it's a safe way to get in. And if you're not even comfortable with that, a lot of the offices will allow you to be an associate. You're not going to get paid as much, but once again, it's an associate. You can walk away at 6 months or so. So it's a really no risk way to get in and try the system. So it seems simple to me. And like I said, rather than going and committing to a DSO for, I think it's usually more than a year contract at a certain amount. Now, are you going to be guaranteed a salary? No, but part of that's going to depend on you. We do want people that have confidence in themselves and feel like they can do the work. If they just want to get a guarantee because they don't feel like they can do it, then maybe that is the best place for them. But We want people that can come in and take charge and have confidence in themselves that they can can do the dentistry.
I just love what you guys are doing at Comfort Dental, because kind of like I've said, I've just talked to too many dentists that bought into the dream. They're completely invested. There's not a lot of lateral movement once you have a DMD or DDS behind your name. It's not like you got a communications degree and you're like, I just won't use my major.
Yeah.
You're vested. And you're not just vested financially, you're vested socially. Like you kind of taken on that identity. And for so many dentists that are vested like that, to not enjoy what they're doing, or to feel trapped, or to feel like they're always in some reoccurring cycle where they're on the verge of burnout because they can't just figure out all the different pieces they need to be the great dentist and the great owner and the great business. And it's overwhelming and it's crushing. And that's why I just love that you are giving dentists another opportunity, another way out, instead of them having to just exit the profession or stay trapped in something where they're just depressed their whole life. That you give them an option to be able to do what they love, to do what they're great at, and get compensated. Like, I can't say it enough. It really is almost like you and Comfort Dental are giving this cup of cold water to a profession that needs it.
Yeah, and it gives them the ability to practice, and also when they get to retirement, it gives them a way to retire, because so many of them get to the end of their profession and can't sell their practice with water, haven't had their savings, and it's depressing. I once went and looked at a practice where the guy was unfortunately dying of cancer, and he's trying to sell his practice, and it wasn't sellable, and so he had nothing to give his family, and it was just like, I don't want to end up like that, but it happens.
If there's a dentist out there that wants to get in touch with you, is that possible, or do you want them just to go into the website?
Mm-hmm. They can contact CM Bloss at comfortdental.biz anytime, and I'll respond to the email. I give them my phone number. Of course, my phone number, I don't know. I give it. It's 303-862-2909. I have a lot of spam coming through, so if I don't answer it, just leave a message and I'll call you back.
Dr. Bloss, thank you so much just for your time. Really appreciate you showing up, answering these questions. Just thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Well, you do a great job. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. You can learn more about Comfort Dental at comfortdental.com.